Dr. Vincent Bacote here, the Wheaton College Center for Applied Christian Ethics. To my left is Dr. Richard Gibson in our English department, expert in digital humanities, and today he's answering our question about one of the greatest moral challenges. I think I know where he's going with this one. Dr. Gibson, what's one of the greatest moral challenges of our moment?
Well, I only need 2 letters, man. AI.
So, I think it's helpful. You've done this in other places. What is a accessible, digestible way for people to understand really what we're talking about what AI is, and then what is the moral challenge, particularly amid all of the people who are over enthusiastic about it, but the people who are also being apocalyptic about it?
Yeah, why don't we start by talking about the modern iteration of AI, and then we can pivot to the moral challenges that it faces. Because the challenges that the current iteration faces is different than what I think people had imagined a few years ago. So once upon a time, scientists wanted to create logic chopping machines. So almost perfect reasoners. And the goal of AI research development for most of the 20th century was to build machines that would faultlessly arrive at the correct conclusion based on premises. So it really would be a kind of super intelligence but the problem was trying to get all the knowledge in the world into the system.
Right.
And it turns out that the world we inhabit, particularly the world we inhabit in human languages, which the technical term there is natural languages, is really hard to turn into computer programs that can function faultlessly. So there's this important paradigm shift that happened at the end of the 20th century where AI developers, although at the time people were a little bit shy about using that term, it had become a little bit embarrassing to say you're working on AI because the previous generations had failed, they shifted towards just collecting a lot of data. And around the same time, the amount of computing power available to research scientists increased, and it became more and more plausible to build bigger and bigger systems to absorb more and more data. And then there was a series of breakthroughs this is a much longer conversation in training neural nets. The end result of it is, once you've got the internet, you got a lot of human language lying around, and you've got all of this interesting human thought that's been encoded in natural language. And the transformer architecture developed at Google, but popularized by OpenAI, has now really maximized the potential of the internet to build something that contains a lot of knowledge and that can converse with us like a human. And then there's all of these other consequences that radiate out from there that are building on other technologies that existed 10 years ago, but weren't all that useful. Let me just give you one example. It was already possible, years ago, to call someone in another country and hand that person control of your computer. Right? So once upon a time, if you needed tech support, you could actually hand over control to this other person. Well, now you can have a bot do that. Right? So you can this is what people are talking about in terms of AI agents, is that now a bot can be operating inside your computer and then operating on your behalf outside the computer. And that has lots of moral consequences.
It does. So, in that regard, is the moral challenge what to do with that type of thing?
Yes.
Or is it even the fact that these things are just sort of presented in a way as morally neutral, or as really morally neutral and opportunistic technologies for people who want to be, innovators or whatever?
Yeah, so I think that there are moral challenges on both sides. So there's the moral challenge that AI poses to us because AI makes us more powerful, particularly as users of the internet. Right? There's all of these things that ordinary people like us can now do with our AI agents that were not previously possible for us. So I am terrible at programming. I have tried multiple times since the beginning of my career as a digital humanist to set up as a proper programmer, and it's always sputtered for me. But now, using various software that's available through the OpenAI companies, some of them not even requiring a subscription, I can make a proper program in minutes. Right? All I have to know is what I want the program to do and have a loose sense of how I want to connect the pieces together, and there's that program. But then that gives me more power than I've had previously. It also puts me as a person who's like a very amateur programmer in a position where I could be releasing code onto the internet, which could have all kinds of flaws in it. But then there's the other side of it, which is, AI also allows me to interact with the computer in a different way. And let's just be frank, like I now can treat a computer like a human. And at certain moments, it's even tempting to me to pretend like what I'm relating to is a human. Mm-hmm. And I'm really troubled by all of the stories that I'm really reading about people who are using AI as a therapist,
right,
or as a replacement lover.
Yeah.
And I think that because we as humans are so predisposed to humanize what's around us, we're very generous with our humanity. These things are really, really confusing. And so we both have the problem of AI's reflection upon us, the way that it mirrors us, but also the way that it extends us. And if we can move in the direction that CACE wants to go, like we need to be talking about formation, right? The ideal user isn't just someone who knows a lot. The ideal user is someone who can use AI well. Right. And I don't think that that's simply a skills training seminar issue. Like I think that's really a life development issue, so that someone would be resilient, and also someone would be connected to human communities so that they would not be tempted to effectively like sell their humanity to the bots, which I think is a real temptation for the first time.
And so again, in that regard, what do you think is the thing that is, we're in the formation business as
yes.
professors, and we have at least a significant percentage of our students have shown up. They've already done certain things with one of the.
Oh yeah.
And what is the challenge or the deformation issue for them that they may not be aware that they're becoming party to?
Yes.
By just using, if you will, the next technological toy
yes.
that is presented to them.
Yes. So I have a couple thoughts. One is I want to lead with, I have my term.
Please.
I'm very concerned about the way that even before generative AI showed up in the teens, we were starting to turn ourselves into bots. Like we were already bots in the old sense of machines that collect text from the internet, do almost nothing with it, and then distribute it out on the internet again. And the kind of textbook example is the social media user who's just like constantly reposting someone else's stuff, unthoughtfully, right, without really doing anything to it or verifying it. And so I'm concerned about a pre-existing culture of what I call, and this is slightly cheeky, outputivity, right, where you're just like constantly gathering and then dispersing text or numbers. So I worry about students unwittingly buying into this culture of outputivity, in which they assume that they need to be like constantly producing material without really pausing to think about first of all, what they're collecting and distributing, but also like what their role is within this wider information ecosystem. Like to what extent are you just distributing misinformation? You probably don't know. And I think OpenAI, but also like the general round of products, Cheat GPT is what I call it when students are misusing it, but like they make that situation worse. So I don't think that we need to just simply saying like, hey, back off, don't use AI all the time. I think we need to be teaching them about the like wider consequences of the technologies that they're using. And then I think about it at a place like Wheaton, like we need to be creating scenarios for meaningful human contact. Like even more so than in the past. Like as I view it in my own classroom, like I'm trying to take as much of the digital technology out of my classroom as possible, so that when my students are with me, we're fully present to one another and we enjoy human fellowship. But then I also, in other settings, are trying to train them about what generative AI products can do, what they can't do, and where we start to get into riskier kinds of relationships.
Yeah.
Both in what we're doing, but also what we're receiving from them. And the paradigm that I'm developing is saying, look, if you want to be an excellent user, you need to be a deep thinker. The riskiest user is the shallowest thinker, because the shallowest thinker is going to end up just recycling the slop that the worst model ends up producing without realizing that that's what the person is passing on. And this is like a real problem now that's emerging in companies where they're finding that there's a lot of work slop, which is this is a real industry term now, that people are producing because they feel like they're supposed to be using generative AI products in their jobs. And like, we want to produce graduates of Wheaton College who are not sloppers.
Right. So, what is the moral opportunity, in other words, in terms of using AI as a deep thinker?
Yeah.
And what is and how should we think about the apocalyptic discourse about AI? In other words, hey, it's coming, a lot of people are going to just be out of work, and in other words, that we're all subject to the Peter Thiels of the world.
Oh boy. Well, why don't we start with the potential?
Yeah.
We've never been able to use the internet in this way before. I mean, the like real potential, as I see it, for the human worker with generative AI isn't just that you can produce more, but that you are going to be able to bring materials together faster than you ever would have previously. So if you know a subject domain well, generative AI extends your ability to search what's out there and to potentially make connections between materials that you in your lifetime would never have been able to find and connect. But you have to be able to command the resources, which I think requires the development of expert level knowledge in some domain.
Right.
And it could be that as the models get better, they're going to be able to do more of this kind of work. But the way I've been pitching it to my students is, like, we've never been able to search all of the resources that are available in the world in a host of languages in this way previously. It's been out there, right? Like, there might have been some person who's researching in Sri Lanka and another person who's researching in Mongolia, and like, they just never would have known about each other.
Right.
But now we've got this computer that can work really well with natural languages, and it's going to help us to make those connections. And it's going to speed up the process whereby we release and exchange those materials with one another. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
And then even beyond generative AI, machine learning, which is the larger category in which this big data movement is happening, and what was called deep learning 10 years ago, but that term's kind of falling away. Machine learning just makes it possible to gather lots and lots of data and to arrive at pretty good tentative conclusions that can be tested. So the same neural nets that we're talking about can be used for other things, and that could be helpful. I mean, the usual categories people talk about is like agriculture, drug discovery, other kinds of areas of scientific inquiry that there's a lot of data and it takes a long time to research it. There could be some remarkable scientific discoveries in the next few years that just wouldn't have been possible or would have taken much longer to develop over time.
Yeah.
So as I say to people, they say were you optimistic or pessimistic about generative AI? And I just say I'm ambivalent, because I think that that's an adult attitude about most things in this world we're living in.
Right.
I, on the one hand, see its incredible potential, and I use generative AI on a regular basis in my professional concerns, but I'm also grateful at the end of the day to close my computer and spend time with my kids.
Right.
And so I worry about people ending up in situations where they're becoming AI shut-ins without realizing what they're doing.
Right. Okay, that's great. Yeah.
In terms of the economic scenarios, man, history's an open thing again, right?
Yeah.
Fukuyama was wrong. History's not ending. Nobody really knows what's happening in the next couple of years. So I don't think an apocalyptic scenario is likely, because I just don't foresee AI being able to do everything in everyone's job. And I also think it's still new enough that it's possible to imagine its possibilities without running up against the actual friction of the real world.
Yeah.
Like all those weirdly shaped lead pipes out there. Right, there's a lot of analogously weirdly shaped lead pipes that require humans to intervene and kind of figure out how to direct the machine.
Right.
I'm also a little bit, I think I'm a little bit more bullish than some people about the possibility that new jobs are going to be created as new businesses are being created in the next couple of years. But that's, I think, kind of an open question. I don't foresee imminent economic collapse. I do think that companies are going to try to save money, especially in the midst of our currently volatile economic environment. Because we're living in a period where the stock market seems to go through these like immediate boom cycles.
Yeah.
But it's possible that there's going to be a bust that follows. And then one of the ways that companies are going to try to save money is they're going to say, well, we just invested in these AI systems. Let's see if we can go without like humans for a little while to run in this division. And so people will lose their jobs. And then a couple of years later, they're going to get rehired or someone else will get hired because the company realizes that there's limitations to what you can do by stringing a bunch of bots together. But you know, it's hard to say. You know, and in my own disposition, I wake up in the morning and I think the same thing I think most days, which it's nice to be alive today.
Okay, that's a great way for us to wrap it. Well, thanks so much. This is great.
Thank you.
And we'll see where the future takes us.